Marcus Ealy here with Status Coup, and also I'm with Lauren Steiner from the Robust Opposition. I've been watching her since college. I'm really excited to do this. I'm honored that you would take the time out to come and do this with me. I really appreciate it. And we're here in the hall of the California Democratic Party convention that just happened today, and we just left the progressive meeting, and we were hearing a lot of complaints and disappointments folks had with the way things played out at this convention. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, first of all, Marcus, thanks for having me. I'm a big fan of Status Coup, and I've been following Jordan Chariton for a long time, and I like the way that he tries to go into the heartland of the country and get the real stories. And having lunch with you, you explained to me that you do the same thing, and I think that's what we have to do. We have to stop focusing on the horse race and the buzz and really talk about the issues. And what better way to talk about the issues than to interview the people who are actually experiencing the problems that supposedly progressive politicians are trying to fix. So, so this convention is my third one that I've covered since being a delegate for Bernie Sanders at the national convention in 2016. And after that, I started following my friends, progressive activists, who decided to enter and get involved with the Democratic Party to try to make it more progressive. Because most people think of California as a liberal state, and yes, we do have a 70% supermajority of Democrats in the legislature, which means we don't even need a Republican to pass a tax increase. But the fact is the Democrats, for the most part, are very corporatist. And even though it's in the party platform that we should have a ban on fracking, that we should have single-payer health care, we've been unable to get a ban on fracking, and the Speaker of the Assembly last year, Anthony Rendon, shelved our single-payer bill because Governor Jerry Brown said to him, please do not embarrass me by presenting me with a bill passed by the legislature that I'm going to have to veto. And this is the same Jerry Brown who I worked for in 1992 when he ran for president, and he actually debated Bill Clinton on the Phil Donahue show, and he made the case for single-payer health care. So Jerry Brown, over the last 30 years, has gotten really conservative. He's out now. We have Gavin Newsom as the new governor, and he purports to be progressive, and he's done some progressive things, but he has to tread very cautiously because the Democratic Party is still very beholden to corporate, money. So that was one of the biggest complaints at the convention, and you even heard it in the closing session where Doraka Larimore Hall, who is the vice chair of the party, ran for chair and lost, was saying we have to get corporate money out of the party. There was a big scandal a couple of years ago where they were taking money from the fossil fuel companies, the party was, and funneling it to candidates. And that's why these candidates become what they call mod Dems, moderate Dems, or oily Dems, they're referred to, because they take money from big oil. And oftentimes, sadly, these are legislators of color, Latino and African American legislators, who are taking this money and voting against the interests of their own constituents, because as you know, many of these toxic projects are located in low-income communities of color. And Rusty Hicks, one of the biggest disappointments.
Well, I wanted to stop you just right there real quick, because it's like that's a really thing that works my nerves, is that we get folks of color in power, and I'm not trying to say anybody's selling out or doing whatever, but the thing is, you hide behind folks of color instead of showing up for folks of color. And I want to make sure that we make it clear that one or two black or brown or people or women in power, that's great, and we need that representation. But if they're not fighting for people of color, and they're not fighting for women, and they're not fighting for the issues that they represent, what was the point of that representation in the first place? And we have that. We see that again with a lot of candidates.
Well, we had Kimberly Ellis, who's an African-American woman running for chair, and she almost beat Eric Bauman 2 years ago. And a lot of people think she did beat Eric Bauman, that he cheated to win. She did do a contest of the election. She lost the contest, and she chose not to do a lawsuit because she wanted to move forward. Anyway, Eric Bauman was forced to resign in November because of sexual harassment and sexual assault charges, which he is fighting now. There have been lawsuits filed against the California Democratic Party for protecting him and also retaliating against the people who exposed him. And that's a big mess. So we have a lot of issues with that. But he's gay, so his sexual harassment and assault was against young males in the party. Anyway, Kimberly Ellis ran again, and she was opposed by, Daraka Larimore Hall, the person I mentioned earlier, who purports to be a progressive, but a lot of people have issues with him, and Rusty Hicks, who has never been active in Democratic Party politics. He wasn't even a member of a local Dem club. He was put in by the establishment to be Eric Bauman 2.0. And here's a man who I first encountered back in 2014 when I, as an anti-fracking activist, or fractivist as we like to call ourselves, went down to Carson, California, because Occidental Petroleum was proposing to drill 200 new wells in this low-income community of color already inundated with these toxic projects. And Maria Elena Durazo, who was the head of the LA County Fed, and Rusty Hicks, who was her political director, bussed in 500 workers. And they were from the IBEW, the Electrical Workers Union, and the Teamsters Union. And they all wore shirts that said "Jobs for Carson," even though there would only be 34 permanent jobs. None of the jobs would go to residents of Carson, and they weren't even unionized jobs. And I have a photo from that evening of Maria Elena sitting next to the $1,000 an hour attorney for Occidental Petroleum, thick as thieves, trying to conspire to kill that fracking ban resolution. And Jerry Brown aided and abetted in that by personally calling all of the council members in Carson who were sitting on the fence and convinced them to not vote. So there are a bunch of hypocrites in California talking about how they're not going to let Donald Trump drill offshore in offshore waters, when in fact we are actually drilling in state waters offshore, and Jerry Brown permitted 20,000 new wells during his 8 years as governor. So why can't we get a fracking ban even though it's in the platform? Because these elected officials are beholden to big oil, and the biggest lobby group is the Western States Petroleum Association. And I just found out today at that meeting we just came from that Rusty Hicks, the new chairman, the one who worked to bus in those people to kill that fracking ban, just signed a partnership with the Western States Petroleum Association. So what does that tell you? So here progressives are trying very hard to influence the party, and we're being thwarted at every turn, which is why I personally Dem exited in June of 2017 after they cheated Kimberly the first time. So, I feel it's more effective to be an activist on the issues directly and on specific pieces of legislation directly. So I personally have been fighting this year, not for single payer because our bill died and we couldn't get anyone to do another bill, but there were some affordable housing bills, some charter school reform bills, and some criminal justice reform bills. And we made some incremental wins in that area. So that's good. It's not everything we wanted, but when you have to work through the legislature and through elected officials, many of whom who are bought and paid for, to get these small wins, you have to claim them as victories in order to boost morale, to grow the movement, to keep fighting.
Yeah, I really like the notion that you made of working on one issue at a time and pushing folks, because that's something I explain to folks all the time, is they like to talk about the Green New Deal or these big, huge legislations they want passed through Congress. And I honestly, if Bernie gets in, that's great, but it's not going to happen if you don't stand up and push that with him. Yeah. It's not. And part of that is you have to show the pain and suffering that's being caused and why we're going to do that. And the pain and suffering of folks who live in these communities who were told, oh, well, there's going to be jobs coming for you. Okay, you got these shirts on. Where are the jobs? And why isn't the media going in and searching that? Why aren't they finding out that? That's because, honestly, there's no investigative journalism has been just culled across the media industry. Yeah. There's 60% of the jobs in print media are gone now, and investigative journalism, like, it's going to cost the capitalist class money. The capitalist class is what funds everything. They decide. I personally
feel that journalism should be publicly funded. I think there's certain things that should be. See, my activism is fighting neoliberalism. That's how I define it. And neoliberalism is the philosophy that's been in vogue for the last 40 years, which is the private sector can do everything better, more efficiently than the public sector. But I don't think that they can provide public goods and services because it's counter to their profit motive. And all you have to do is look at healthcare, where the insurance company actually calls, when they pay a claim out, they call it on their balance sheet a medical loss. So their whole goal is not to pay claims. And that is antithetical to the idea of providing health care for all. So any of these candidates that think there's some other way to get to universal health care without decimating private insurance companies is dreaming. And that's why, John Hickenlooper was so roundly booed yesterday, when he said that there is a role for private insurance and we should have a public option. Because everybody knows if there's a public option, only the sickest people will go in there, it'll be unsustainable, and then they'll say, see, it doesn't work. So I feel that there should be affordable housing and not provided by developers, not incentivizing developers by saying certain percentage of your housing has to be affordable, because it's never affordable for people who make minimum wage. It never is there long enough. They only have to provide that unit for 5 years, and then when that tenant moves out, they can make it market rate, or they can completely bypass building the affordable housing by putting money into some fund that never gets used for affordable housing. So I think we need to go back to public housing, social housing. I think transportation should be public. It is, and it's pretty subsidized. I think it should be free. I think broadband should be free. You have a digital divide in this country, and information is currency. And if you don't have access to information, which is now on the internet, you're not going to be able to succeed in life. So I think there should be public broadband, public health care, and public education through college and trade school, as Bernie proposes. And we have to...
But that's socialism, and socialism doesn't work. No, don't do socialism. You're going to hurt my profits. I need my money. Nah, nobody cares. Bye. You don't need... I'm sorry. You don't need that much money, bro. People are dying. Like, a $400 emergency, half the country can't afford that. Right. Let's just go through a couple of ideas for $400 emergencies, because any $400 emergency is actually more than that. You blow a head gasket on your engine or something. That's $400. Let's just assume that it's really not, but let's just assume that's $400. Now you got to get to work. You lost money because you can't get to work, or you got to take Ubers to work, which is half your shift money if you work for minimum wage, depending on how far you are from that. Now, and then on top of that, how you gonna eat? You got to sacrifice a little bit of food now so you can pay your rent. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like these things have a cascading effect for poor and working people, and these little things that she's talking about, making them public, would save poor and working people money. And then in turn, poor and working people having more money means they can spend more money on your goods, capitalist class. You actually do better in this situation.
Well, that's why I think they should, Elizabeth Warren has a good plan for eliminating apparently 95% of student debt. But I think if we forgave all $1.3 trillion worth of student debt, it would be the biggest stimulus to the economy that we've ever had, because millennials could afford to get married, start families, buy houses, start businesses, and like you say, spend in the economy. And, if any person says to me, how are you going to pay for it, one more time, I'm going to pull my hair out, because they never ask how we're going to pay for these endless wars. They never ask how we're going to pay for the bank bailouts. They never ask for how we're going to subsidize fossil fuel companies.
Well, not even that. How are we going to pay for what we got? What we have is the fourth most expensive, our medical system, our medical economy, if it broke off and was its own economy, would be the fourth largest economy in the world in terms of GDP. That is the most expensive health market there is. And where are we at? We're like somewhere in the middle among developed countries. We're paying all this money and we in the middle. Word? I'm sorry, what we have we can't even pay for.
Yeah.
So how you gonna pay for private Medicare? That's the question I want to ask. How are we paying for this? And I actually have a friend who is a conservative and has a conservative case for Medicare for all. Stay tuned for that one, guys. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, back to what you were saying about the just doing these different programs to help people as far as like public transportation and whatnot. I think that we should definitely have more of those programs, and that would create a better place for poor and working people. And when poor and working people are doing better, you have less crime because they have work to go to. You know what I mean? Like, I had my when I was much younger, I had a relative who shall remain nameless that sold drugs, and I hadn't eaten in 2 days. Had not. He hears my stomach growl and is like, "What's the matter with you?" And this is normally a cousin that was a bully to me. Like, all the time, this person was a bully to me. And he's like, "What's the matter with you?" So we go up, and with drug money, I got to eat that day. I hadn't eaten in 2 days. I got to eat off of drug money. Now, not only would I not have to eat off of drug money if he had a job, but also if there was a situation where where black people didn't have the legacy of not being able to pass down generational wealth because of redlining, because of the lack of social programs for us. Remember, we didn't even get GI Bill when it came out. We didn't get Social Security until many years after it came out.
Yeah, well, I was having a discussion yesterday, which I live streamed on my channel, about reparations with two African American, female Bernie delegate friends of mine, and saying that Bernie needs to have a better answer for that. Because, and I want to refer people to my page on Facebook to see this discussion, because it's Lauren Steiner, LaurenSteiner, on Facebook, and all my posts are public, and I will upload it to my YouTube channel, which is Lauren from LA. This was an interesting conversation because, I looked on the ADOS page and the BLM page, and reparations is a lot more than just cash payments. And there's things that you could do, give to historically black colleges and universities, give to black businesses, give to black mortgages, just to try to make recompense for the things that you just talked about: redlining, racial covenants, no GI Bill. And there's also free health care and free college in there, which is already part of Bernie's plan. So I have spoken to both Nina Turner and Ro Khanna, who are two of Bernie's campaign co-chairs, about the need for Bernie to say, yes, I am for reparations, and here's what it looks like. And all he has to do is go through those two web pages and pick and choose those policies and say that he supports them. I mean, I think it's kind of weak tea to say, oh, yes, I support H.R. 40, which is the bill to study it, because study is just a stall job. It's like, we need action now. We don't need any studies. Like, I fought a bill in 2013 to supposedly regulate fracking, but it really wasn't. It just provided notification, disclosure on the chemicals, groundwater monitoring before and after the frack job, and a study. And after that study was completed 2 years later, and I found out that it wasn't even a new study, it was just like a study of all the studies, what do you suppose the recommendation was?
Nothing.
No, more studies.
Yeah, of course.
So
Well,
this is what they do. So I don't think that we should be talking about H.R. 40, which is a study. I think we have to talk about very specific policies. And the other thing that I suggested, and they agreed with it, is that Bernie needs to meet with some people who are experts or advocates on ADOS and reparations and listen to what they want. Bernie has a tendency sometimes when he goes to talk too much and listen less. And this new thing that he's doing with town halls, especially in the South, where he's taking questions, to me is more effective. And maybe it's because I've heard Bernie's speech a million times, I could say it in my sleep. And there are some people who may have never heard it and want to hear it for the first time. But the town halls are very effective because then he can hear what are the issues that people are concerned about. But he has to really listen. Like there was a delegate by the name of Robert Gregory McKelvey, or maybe it's Gregory Robert McKelvey. He was a delegate from Portland, Oregon. He now lives in Atlanta. And he went to that Atlanta town hall that was held and asked this question. He didn't say the word reparations, but he just said, what kind of policies can you do to, make up or acknowledge that there is institutional and systemic racism that cannot be fixed by measures that address economic inequality. And Bernie's answer was really unsatisfactory. So he really needs to listen and understand that people are concerned about this issue in a way that they were not concerned about it in 2016. And everybody knows that Bernie does poorly. Now they say he does poorly among African Americans in general, but we know that young African Americans appreciate Bernie, and Bernie does well with young people in almost every demographic. But overall, and there's a lot of older African Americans who do vote, he still needs to convince them. And I think that this is an issue that he needs to tackle.
Yeah. On the issue of specifically reparations, like the one thing that we need, like, you got to talk about and acknowledge is like slavery. That is the redlining and Jim Crow and prison industrial complex and all these things that are now have exacerbated that, but because of slavery. And when we talk about capitalism extracting wealth from people, that is the ultimate abstraction, or rather of wealth, because they labor for you for free. You get no compensation for your labor. And remember, labor creates all wealth. There is no wealth without labor, period. So people doing this, so all that work, multiple generations, about 200-300 years of slavery, and then 100 years now after that. And to take care of those things, it's definitely more than just money. But the other thing we need to point out is a lot of these folks are not honest actors. They're not acting in good faith when they call Bernie out for reparations. Now, I'm not saying anything about the people that you spoke to because I do not know them, but I'm saying a lot of the centrists that are trying to call Bernie out for that are not acting in good faith, because it's like, oh, well, Bernie needs to talk about reparations. Okay, when's the last time you talked about reparations? What's your plan? Oh, you don't got one? Shut up. Thank you. Bye. You know what I mean? It's just, it's disingenuous. And the problem with a bad faith attack is not that it's a lie, because it's not a lie. They are right. Bernie does need to do better on reparations. They are 100% right. And there are people that are working with him to do that. But you don't talk to them. You come with your bad faith attack and you hit Bernie, and then you say, see, I got a plan. And then we look at your plan, and it's like something you cobbled together 5 minutes ago. Or in the case of Julian Castro, you stole it from 2016 when somebody else hit Bernie on that. And you literally took their attack and remade it for yourself. However, that was 4 years ago, and Bernie's people, like, he should have been on that. Yeah. It should have been something like, they hit you in 2016 for this. You should have been prepared for this. Yeah. So
what else do you want to talk about? Because we were running out.
Oh, yeah, we are running out of time. Oh, Lord, it is 23 minutes. You know what, y'all? We're going to wrap this up because she has a flight to catch. I got a flight to catch, and it has been a pleasure. Thank you guys so much. Thank you so much, Lauren. I really appreciate you. Thank you. So make sure you guys catch the Robust Opposition with Lauren Steiner. Your Twitter is at Lauren Steiner, and
Lauren_Steiner.
Okay. And then Facebook is
Lauren.Steiner.la.
And then YouTube?
Lauren from LA.
All right. Make sure you guys check her out on all of the possible platforms, all of the things, and smash that like button, smash the subscribe button, hit the bell so you get notifications on our stuff. Status Coup, Marquis Ealy signing off. Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.